BizNews community for the warm invitation and for convening such an extraordinary gathering of leaders, investors, and engaged citizens. It's an honor to join you here in Hermanos so early in my tenure as United States Ambassador to the Republic of South Africa. Though I've only recently arrived, I've already begun to experience the richness and complexity of this remarkable country. I've traveled beyond Pretorius to Johannesburg and Durban, Cape Town, and now Hermanus. I have met with government officials, business leaders, and local communities. I have visited at the Apartheid Museum and the District 6 Museum. A word about those. Those are not mere tourist stops. They are places that remind you that South Africa's history is lived memory, sacrifice, struggle, resilience, and unfinished work. At the same time, I have been struck by something equally powerful, the dynamism of this country, its entrepreneurs, its innovators, its young people, its deep reservoir of talent, ambition, and confidence. South Africa is a nation of immense potential, immense complexity, and immense importance, not only on this continent, but around the globe. In the weeks and months ahead, I look forward to engaging with a wide range of South Africans in government, in civil society, and in the business community. Many of these voices are here in this room today. Listening will be essential, but so will clarity. Let me speak plainly about the moment we're in and some of the challenges I see in our bilateral relationship. The United States values partners in South Africa. This country is Africa's largest economy and is the largest U.S. trade and investment partner in sub-Saharan Africa. More than 500 companies operate here, employing over 250,000 South Africans and contributing meaningfully to economic growth. That is real partnership. But partnership must be rooted in reciprocity. President Trump has been clear about our concerns. These concerns are not merely rhetorical. They involve the business environment, rural safety, the Expropriation Act, and South Africa's growing engagement with some of America's greatest adversaries. These issues shape investor confidence, they shape strategic trust, and they shape the trajectory of our bilateral relationship. When businesses believe their property rights may be uncertain, when policy frameworks create unpredictability instead of clarity, and when strategic alignments appeared to drift towards regimes that do not share our democratic values, common ground becomes harder to sustain. Honest partners must be able to say this out loud. President Trump's America First policy means I'm here to advance the security, prosperity, and values of the American people. That's my duty. But America First does not mean America alone. It means where cooperation advances our interests and benefits our partners, we pursue it energetically. This is where I see the real opportunity. Let me highlight what's already working. This year alone has been filled with milestones that demonstrate the depth and momentum of the U.S.-South African commercial relationship. Visa launched its first ever data center in Johannesburg, a 1 billion rand investment over the next 3 years. That's not symbolic, that's infrastructure. That's long-term commitment to strengthening South Africa's digital payments ecosystem and positioning this country as a leader in financial innovation. Google Cloud has opened its first African cloud region in Johannesburg as part of a $16 billion investment in South Africa's digital transformation. That means advanced cloud services, AI capabilities, and machine learning tools are now available to South African enterprises, enabling them to compete globally. Microsoft is investing an additional 5 billion rand by 2027 to expand cloud and AI infrastructure here, building on more than 16 billion rand already invested. And Microsoft is helping to skill 1 million South Africans, ensuring that local talent is positioned for the digital economy of the future. Amazon is another great American tech company that is not only expanding its presence in South Africa with thousands of jobs and new facilities, but also providing much-needed skills at training centers like the AWS Skills Center in Cape Town, the first international facility of its kind outside of the United States of America. These are not isolated announcements. They're proof that American companies bring capital, high standards, cutting-edge technology, workforce development, and long-term commitment. This is what commercial diplomacy looks like in action, and this is precisely the kind of partnership we want to expand. A healthy economic relationship, however, is never one-sided. The strongest partnerships are built on an investment and opportunity flowing in both directions. Just as American companies are investing in South Africa's growth and innovation, we're eager for South African businesses and entrepreneurs to explore opportunities in the United States. That's why I'm pleased to announce the Select USA Investment Accelerator, a new initiative designed to streamline access to U.S. markets for major investors. I encourage any interested business leaders to contact my team for more information and to discuss the ways we can support you in your investment journey. Keep an eye on our embassy website as well. We'll have more information on this program online in a few days. Initiatives like this strengthen the foundation of the U.S.-South African commercial relationship by expanding opportunity on both sides of the Atlantic. But sustaining and expanding that partnership requires the right conditions, predictability, the rule of law, and a level playing field for businesses willing to invest for the long term. I recognize that South Africa's history demands serious attention to an inequality and redress. That injustice of apartheid cannot be dismissed or minimized. But the question is not whether historical injustice matters. Of course it does. The real question is whether current policies are achieving their intended outcome. Programs such as broad-based Black economic empowerment are designed to expand opportunity and correct historic injustice. Those are important goals. But when those policies are structured in ways that introduce challenges to ownership or create complex compliance requirements or are clouded in charges of corruption, investors begin to reassess risk. Foreign investors, including the more than 500 American companies operating in South Africa, make long-term decisions based on stability and predictability. They compare markets around the world and allocate capital where the rules are clear and consistent. When the policy environment becomes uncertain, investment slows. Expansion plans are reconsidered. In some cases, companies choose to deploy their capital elsewhere. And when that happens, the costs are borne not by the investors, but by the workers and the communities. Fewer factories are built. Fewer smaller businesses are integrated into supply chains. Fewer young South Africans gain access to the skills and jobs that large-scale investment can create. If policies create uncertainty around property rights or impose regulatory burdens that discourage this expansion, the result isn't not empowerment, it's stagnation. And stagnation ultimately harms the very communities these reforms are meant to uplift. Inclusive growth requires both opportunity and investment confidence. The most successful economies find ways to pursue redress while also creating an environment where capital, innovation, and entrepreneurship are encouraged to grow. I would suggest that the responsibility to craft these solutions does not rest solely with policymakers. It rests with business leaders as well. Those of you in this room have influence. You shape narratives. You advise governments. You structure deals. You innovate. The future of this economy will not be decided by rhetoric. It will be decided by whether South Africa creates an environment that welcomes investment and rewards risk-taking. The United States stands ready to be a partner in that work. We believe the U.S.-South Africa relationship has great untapped potential, but unlocking it requires alignment on fundamentals. If South Africa seeks improved access to U.S. markets and deeper economic integration, we will need to see serious proposals that reflect reciprocity and fairness. Fair trade must work in both directions. I've spent much of my public life navigating disagreements. When I led an international commission to help secure free and fair elections in Nicaragua, I worked alongside leaders with whom I disagreed profoundly on most issues, yet we found common ground in service of a greater good. That experience taught me that principled fairness and cooperative engagement are not contradictions, but complements. I bring the same mindset to this role. We may not agree on everything with the government of South Africa. We may continue to have serious differences regarding international legal proceedings, strategic relationships, or elements of domestic policy. But there are areas where progress should be straightforward. Protecting rural communities from violence, condemning rhetoric that incites hatred and glorifies violence, ensuring the expropriation policies include fair and clear compensation standards, expanding digital and critical minerals cooperation, ending mandatory surrender of ownership or control of corporate decision-making as a cost of doing business. These are achievable, practical, and beneficial to both Americans and South Africans. I'm an optimist. If I weren't, I would not have accepted this assignment. South Africa has an opportunity to demonstrate that addressing historical injustice and fostering a world-class investment climate are not competing goals, but mutually reinforcing ones. By working constructively with policymakers to craft solutions that expand opportunity and encourage entrepreneurship, the business community can help build an economy that attracts investment, creates jobs, and delivers lasting prosperity for South Africans. If these conditions are in place, I believe South Africa can unlock an extraordinary level of economic dynamism. South Africa has the talent, the infrastructure, the financial sophistication, and the entrepreneurial energy to be an even greater engine of growth for this continent in partnership with my country. My focus will be clear: to advance policies that benefit the American people, to expand commercial diplomacy, to deepen fair and reciprocal trade, and to engage South Africa candidly, respectfully, but candidly about areas of disagreement. If we can align our shared interests around growth, opportunity, and security, then both our nations will prosper. That's the partnership I hope to build. And then what? We're proud of the 500 companies that are here, but we're not satisfied. Why not 1,000? We're pleased that we've created jobs for 250,000 South Africans, but we're not done. Why not double that number as well? That's how Americans think. Nothing is beyond the pale for us. We want partners who also dream great dreams, and that's South Africa's signature. Let us do all in our power to make our relationship prosper and thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. It feels like there's a moment of opportunity. And you would probably have 99% of the people in this room saying, yay. But what can be done by these people and the BizNews tribe generally to grasp that opportunity, given the blockages that do exist?
Well, what you learn when you arrive here, and I've only been here 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, is the complexity of the situation. You also learn that there are those in the government who want to see the business community succeed, while there are those in the government, frankly, don't want to see it. I'll tell you where our position has been very firm. We put together 5 asks. I mentioned 3 of them, but there were a couple more. We put them forward to the South African government. We've been waiting for almost a year for a response. And as I've made clear in meetings that I've had, the United States is I should look at it this way too. We're running out of patience. We believe that more and more it becomes a statement by the South African government when it doesn't want to respond to simple questions that we have. We may not get clarity on the kill the boar chant that we believe is hate speech. I'm sorry, I don't care what your courts say. It's hate speech. We believe that there is clarity on the expropriation. We believe we can find these things. But the South African government has to step up to the plate. At this point, what I'm saying to the business community, you do too. What I don't have patience for, and I'll be very blunt here. I'm known for being blunt. This is why the president asked me to do this. But I don't want to hear businesses say one thing publicly and another thing privately. I want businesses who tell me privately that triple BEE is hurting them to say so publicly. I don't want them to feel fear from the government. There has to be that kind of outspokenness. Now, your organization clearly does that, or else you wouldn't be having this meeting. But I will urge you to be more outspoken. I think we are at perhaps an existential moment that none of us wanted. Nobody was looking for this situation to go in this direction. Things were going very, very well. But things have gone off course. So, the last part of it, I will say, when I spoke with the president, he had one mandate. It was so simple. He said, I want South Africa to become non-aligned once again. That's not too much to ask, non-alignment. And that's what he wants. He'll take non-alignment, not where we're going right now. That's a meandering answer. See, I'm a diplomat.
No, it's a good answer. Yeah. It's a good answer. Non-aligned is something that I think everybody in this room would love to see. And there's sufficient evidence to show that hasn't been the case. But when you come to the end of your term, what would you define as success? You've been here 3 weeks, so it's pretty early days, but have you given that any thought?
Well, what is success? True success is for the level playing field in business, where America is allowed to compete on an even footing against any country in the world, one-on-one. Because if there is that level playing field, without question, I believe we'll crush the competition. We have better products, better technology. We create jobs that stay in South Africa. We don't bring in our workers, create something that's a piece of crap, and then take it out. My wife used an iron yesterday that was she was ironing something. It was built in China. She put it down, and immediately it burned a hole in the ironing board. It looked like it cost 5 cents or 5 rand to build. We'll build better products. So what's success? Success in business is an even playing field. Success in business is trade deals that are fair for both sides. And that's all we ask for. It's fairness on both sides. We're not asking for a thing more than that. And that's been the president's position he started it in his first term, and he's doubling and tripling down now. And finally, in the foreign policy space. I'm not going to discuss that today. I can't. The situation is too fluid in Iran right now. So it's best not to have a discussion. We can come back and have another discussion on that at the appropriate time. But that has to be resolved. The foreign policy has to be resolved. The statements, the things that have happened in the last week are not at all helpful. Insulting our president on the eve of coming to our country is not a good sign. Sending condolences letters to Iran after one of the world's greatest terrorists has been put down is not a good sign. They have to be resolved, and there are going to be some tough discussions ahead, but hopefully South Africa will understand that it ought not to be aligning with international pariahs like Iran.
You mentioned the last week, but things have been boiling or moving to a boiling point in the relationship between South Africa and the United States. It doesn't make sense for this country not to be friendly with the United States, given that you are our second biggest trading partner. What can you do to cool the temperature?
Yeah, well, Alex, that's a very good point. That's the very first thing we've said. I came here. Don't you love the royal we? When what a politician. We came here. No, I came here specifically with a tone that was positive in an attempt to lower the temperature. And I'm going to continue going in that direction. I'm going to continue looking for partners in the government because we have them, but encouraging them to be more outspoken. I don't want to turn up the temperature, but I can tell you, being perfectly honest about this, the things that have happened in the last week just aren't helpful. But maybe we can find ways around it. My goal is I didn't come here to pick a fight. That just doesn't accomplish anything. I came here hopefully to find ways that our countries can come back to the table and proceed. I mean, think about it, folks. What do you have to have? You have great sophistication. You have an open field in technology. You have great innovators, always have had great innovators in your country. You have the strongest economy in Africa. You've got challenges, infrastructure challenges. They can be fixed. They can be readily fixed. Whether it's rural violence, whether it's your electrical grid, whatever it might be, these things can all be fixed. Just imagine if they were fixed and there were partnerships with the United States, not China, the United States, working to build South Africa. You would be, I would love to see it in 5 years, that we will look back to this conversation and say, what a small partnership we had then, and look where we are now. We can go there. There's nothing stopping us if that's where we want to go.
There's a growing level of frustration in the business community, and here in the Western Cape in particular, which is a different part of the country, as you're well aware, at the growing antagonism between the ANC part of the Government of National Unity and the United States. What can people here, living here, what can people in the business community do, if anything, to perhaps change that trajectory?
Okay, I'm not going to lecture you folks on your history and give you that kind of a recommendation. I don't have the right to do that. But let me comment on this. I read Nelson Mandela's book right before arriving here. I was struck by something dramatic. On the very day one of your leaders, and I just can't remember who it was, but it was one of the top party leaders, might have been in the ANC, might have been outside of the government, made the statement that your country should review that 1976 law that was passed that stated that everybody had to be associated by color. And I had just read the day before that passage in Nelson Mandela's book that addressed that law when it came out, saying it was the worst law he'd ever seen. And now you have people saying we should go that way, but of course in reverse. You have people who will say that the Apartheid Museum will point to 147 laws that were based on race against blacks then, and there are 150 some now that are aimed against whites, and that's been reversed. What do you do about that? What you do is you do what's happening in our country. The corollary, I think, is dramatic. In our country, conservatives who were at such odds with Dr. Martin Luther King are now quoting him about the importance of the character of your, the color of your skin is not important. It's the character of your being that matters. I think it would be wise for the business community to return circa 1995, where it seemed like there was a desire for this country to not just heal wounds, but to explode going forward. And for a while, that's exactly what happened. I would encourage you to go back to those days and explore what the country's identity looked like and champion that going forward. Don't get caught. Don't get caught by playing by the rules of those who want to divide and conquer. If you lose, you lose. Don't fight them that way. Fight them by projecting what you wanted to project in 1995, what the country wanted to project. Look, when you have 40% unemployment, when you have crime out of control, they know it's not working. They know the system isn't working. The vast majority of South Africans know this isn't working. So go back to that dream that you had and start projecting it again.
Yep, hope. Final question, and we are very insular in South Africa, as I think most countries are. We're far away. The tyranny of geography means that we do look inward a lot. But how important are we? How important is this country in the United States? The fact that you have the ear of President Trump, the fact that he sent you here, the fact that you have a background which will enable you to understand this country, and at least the media, as part of it, better than most people, would make us optimistic that perhaps the voices of reason will be heard. Can you give us some insights on that?
Alec, that's an excellent question that you're asking, and it's a very important one. The way an ambassadorship is chosen, normally ambassadorships are given in countries where the biggest issue is who am I having dinner with tonight, and so you give it to someone who's a big donor to your campaign. That's how it's done. In this case, the request came directly from the president to ask me to take this on. In my conversation with him, he laid out the concerns he had, and I'm mentioning that there's the refugee issue, the expropriation issue, all these things. But he kept going to trade. To understand this president is to understand that that's his signature. And he sees trade opportunities all over the world. And he has zeroed in on South Africa as a potential partner. After my conversation with them. He calls very few people to ask them to do this. I was at the White House and visiting with him. Beforehand, I spoke with one of his deputies. And I asked him, if you were to look at all the countries in the world and ask the president to prioritize them, would the president see South Africa in the top 10? And immediately he said yes. So don't think you're insignificant to this president. Don't think that. It is the exact opposite. What he wants is partnerships. He is seeing the potential. He also understands the challenges, and they're serious. And we're not kidding ourselves. There are serious challenges. But he's looking at the opportunities. So I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, I say this with all sincerity. This is a president who is looking at your country, and he is seeing some beautiful music when we can resolve the problems that we have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ambassador. That has actually framed the rest of the conference from here. A position of hope. Often people come to the BizNews events feeling pretty down in the dumps and think, oh, damn, what's going to happen next? And leave having received a better perspective on what's happening. And I think we've begun on that journey. So thank you again for gracing us with your presence, and welcome belatedly to South Africa. We hope you have a long and very successful